All right, so now we have a new character that we're starting with today, and her name is Janelle Battle. And we've actually already seen her. Other people have spoken about her. This is the one that Devin talked about in the library. She saw him um, reading and didn't mock him like he thought. She just handed him another book. And one of the last people suspected that she has a crush on Devin. So here's Janelle. Janelle Hope. Mrs. Janelle Hope. Mrs. Devon Hope. Dream on, fool. You can stand here in the girls' room and practice saying that name till your tongue falls out, or the change bell rings, whichever comes first, and it still won't ever be true. Face it, Devon is Denzel Washington, and you are Thighs R Us. I can hear Lupe now. Stop putting yourself down. You have a very pretty face. Besides, you have a lot more going for you. Yeah, well, I guess that's true. I mean, I am smart and funny, and I know I'm a good person, but this is high school, and nobody seems to care about that. Why couldn't I be tall and elegant like Deandra? Or have Judy Ann's perfect complexion, all smooth and super rich fudge? Better yet, why couldn't I look like Tanisha or Gloria? Then I might have a chance with somebody like Devin. But I don't, so forget it. Devin is different from other jocks, though. How many guys you know read Claude McKay for fun? Seems like every time I go to the library, I catch him squeezed into a corner like he's got something to hide. He smiled at me last time I saw him there. That's something, isn't it? He didn't have to smile, even if I did smile and wave first. And he seemed to like the poem I read at the last open mic Friday. I can't believe I'm getting up in front of people and talking about personal stuff and liking it. I'm saying things that I would never tell anybody usually, but I don't know. There's something about reading poetry. It's almost like acting. The room is kind of set up like a stage, anyway. Mr. Ward turns most of the lights out, and we stand in a spot in front of the video camera. Once he switches it on, it's like you become somebody else. And you could say anything as long as it's in a poem. Then, when you're finished, you just disappear into the dark and sit down, and you're back to being your own self. Gloria says it's the same for her. Hey, Janelle. Oh no, it's Miss Big Mouth Fifth Avenue and another one of her original get ups. Where'd she come from? Hey, Judy Ann. I thought the bathroom was empty. How long was she there? I hope she didn't hear me talking to the mirror. That's all I need to have the whole school laughing about me having a crush on Devin. Lord, please don't let that happen. It's bad enough they call me Battle of the Bulge behind my back. I wish, I wish, I wish. God, I wish people could see me on the inside. I know I'm beautiful there. So we have Janelle has some issues with confidence. She knows she's smart and funny, but she also knows that people don't know the real her, so it feels like nobody seems to care about that. They look at her, they just see that she's overweight, and they kind of dismiss her as the overweight girl. Like that's the box she's been put in. And her open mic poem is called Inside. Daily, I notice you frown at my thick casing. Feel you poke me with the sharp tip of your booted words. You laugh, wrap my woody shell with wicked whispers shaped like knuckles, then toss me aside. Lucky for me, I don't bruise easily. Besides, your loss is someone else's gain, for I am coconut, and the heart of me is sweeter than you know. So, this poem has probably far more figurative language than you even realize. The entire poem is technically an extended metaphor. An extended metaphor is one of those metaphors that must be carried out over a series of lines. It's not just saying, like, he is a pig, but it's like it pulls it out. And so, what is she describing herself as throughout this? Well, she compares herself to a coconut. And so she talks about her woody shell and that she gets tossed aside and she doesn't bruise. And she's talking about this thick casing that you see. And so she's going on to say she's a coconut because it might not be pretty on the outside. If you ever looked at a coconut, they're horrible looking. But it's this thick casing that doesn't look great, but it doesn't really crack or bruise. It seems tough, but when you open it, it's beautiful and delicious and sweet. And she says, I wish people could see that side of me. You never think other folks got feelings. Like Janelle. I must have cracked wise 100 times about her weight. Never even thought about it. It was just something I did for a laugh. Listening to her now, it don't seem all that funny. So we can see here Tyrone's actually starting to grow. Um, and he's saying, like, the things we say, a lot of times we make jokes that we think are funny, but we don't realize the hurt they're causing in someone else. Um, and we don't realize the pain that somebody else might be going through. And so he makes jokes all the time about her being overweight or plump. They call her all these kind of names like Battle of the Bulge. And he thinks it's funny for a laugh. And after hearing her poem, he's like, "Oh my gosh, I've been hurting her this whole time. Like, she's actually a human. I shouldn't have been saying this." Um, so he's starting to grow in this process as well. So now we have another new character, Leslie Lucas. I'm starting to feel like I know Janelle, at least a little, and Lupe and Gloria and Raynard. Before Open Mic Fridays, I hardly knew anybody in this school at all. Big surprise. What could I possibly have in common with these kids? I must have asked myself that question a million times a day when I moved here. I'm white, they're black and Hispanic. I grew up in Westchester County, they grew up in New York City. I like Sheryl Crow, they like Lauryn Hill, except for Raynard and Devin, who are into jazz. It's like we come from two different planets. But hey, it's not my fault. I didn't choose to be here. If it weren't for Mom up and dying on me, I'd still be back in Ossining with my friends. I miss my friends. That's mostly why I hated moving here. I knew I wouldn't have anybody to talk to when it hurts, and it hurts all the time. Missing Mom, I mean. I was full up with loneliness for her a few weeks ago. It was one of those moments that come from out of nowhere when you all of a sudden feel something reach inside your chest, grab your heart, and squeeze till you can hardly breathe. I was in the girls' locker room at the time, and for a minute, I wheeled around like Uncle Donnie does when he's drunk. That's when I bumped into Portia Johnson. Portia Johnson has the reputation for being a little touched in the head. In freshman year, she'd beaten the snot out of a girl who pushed her too far. They say it took 4 people to pull her off the other girl. Everybody had pretty much steered clear of her since then. This is who I bump into. Hey, watch it, she said. Sorry, I told her. You got that right. Why don't you sorry yourself on out of here? Usually this would be the cue for me to make myself invisible, but I was hurting too bad, and I was not in the mood. I flung my locker door open and spoke between my teeth. I said I was sorry. Now why don't you just leave me alone? Leave you alone? Look, if you wanted to be left alone, why the hell did you invade my space? By space, I thought she meant neighborhood. That's when I felt my head spin off. My mom died, all right? And I was sent here to live with my grandmother who lives in this neighborhood, and I had no choice. Not that it's any of your business. The split second those last words flew out, I wanted to take them back, but I couldn't. I swallowed hard and waited for Portia to shove me against the lockers or to punch me in the stomach or to whip out a knife like I'd seen kids do on TV. Instead, she stepped back, lowered herself to the bench, and said, Sorry about your mom. My mom died too. Turns out we both live with our grandmothers. For a long time, she put off telling me what her mom died from. My mom died of cancer, which was no big secret, but hers died from a drug overdose. Portia thought that would make a difference, but when I found out, I told her it made no difference at all. Dead is dead, and lonely's lonely, and they both stink. All that matters, I told her, is that we're friends. And we are. I'm lucky. I was on my way to being like Amy Moskowitz, the one girl in class almost nobody knows anything about. She cuts herself off, hardly ever speaks, or lets anyone in. She seems to be happy by herself. But I need to hear somebody's voice besides my own. I'm not as strong as she is, and now I don't have to pretend that I am. Open Mic Fridays help. We kind of have our own little clique now. The whole school knows who we are, that we're the poets. It's weird. For the first time in my life, I'm part of a group that's cool. Who would believe it? Last month, Mr. Ward gave our class an assignment to write a poem about what frightens us most in honor of Halloween. A year ago, I might have written about something silly like ghosts, which I don't even believe in. And even if I did, ghosts would not be at the top of my list. The scariest thing I can think of now is being all alone in the world. So Leslie's a character who her mom has passed away of cancer and she is sent to live with her grandmother. And so she feels like a fish out of water at this new school. She doesn't fit in. She's a minority in every single way. She grew up in a different area. She's not used to being a part of the city. She hasn't lived the type of life that these kids have lived. And so she already feels like an outsider. And one of these days, she's having a bit of a breakdown, as you would, especially if you're grieving and you've lost somebody that meant so much to you. And she bumps into like the crazy girl in school. Like they say, everyone says she's crazy because she'll like haul off and punch you for nothing and, has been through a lot. And she expects this girl to hit her back or hit her for her comments. And the girl instead confides in her, like, I've been there. And they form this friendship out of this common ground that they have. And you'll kind of notice that throughout this book, a theme that as people start unveiling their identity and revealing who they really are, you're finding people that you make connections with and that you can be friends with, and that you're not as alone as you think you are. So, her poem's called Common Ground. On the dark side of the moon, where death comes sooner than expected, at the edge of heartbreak, we both take a leap into the unknown. At the center of loneliness, we dip into a pool of tears and thrash around, desperate not to drown. We both reach out for a life preserver, something to hold on to, something sturdy, something new. That's when we see it. A buoy called friendship bobbing up between us, and we swim toward it for all we are worth, and we meet there, somewhere, in the middle. So, obviously, she compares her life to feeling like she's drowning, that she's struggling to stay above water. She doesn't know what to do, and she sees this life preserver like, if I could just get there, I'll be okay. And what she didn't see on the other side was somebody else drowning. She couldn't see past that. And so when she gets to the life preserver, so does the other person. And obviously, that's Portia. And she realizes they both were looking for something to save them, and they found each other. So, Tyrone. Man, that little white girl be getting pretty deep. I figured her for something lame like roses are red, violets are blue. Glad I didn't have a bet on that action. More than half the class wanted to read today, but most of them were girls. I wish a few more of the brothers would step up to the mic, even this thing out a little. Know what I'm saying? I always laugh. This is kind of like a side note where it says something lame like roses are red, violets are blue. That is one of my biggest pet peeves is when I ask students for a poem and they start it with roses are red, violets are blue, because that is like the easy way out. And it's so cliche and it is lame. And so I used to have this big poster in my room that I made and it said, roses are red, violets are blue. If you start a poem like this, I will fail you. So that's just my little side note joke of the day. Like, please don't ever do that for me. All right, so now we are going to meet another new character, and this character is Judy Ann Alexander. Good thing Leslie's cough woke me in class this morning. I nodded off 3 times. Once more, Mr. Ward said he'd be bringing me a pillow. That's what I get for staying up late. Again. What choice did I have? Open mic Friday is today, and I'm not about to stand in front of the class in some funky old outfit. I didn't realize it would take me half the night to finish something new. I hope I can stay awake long enough to read my poem when my turn comes. Me writing poetry. What a scream. I'm not smart enough to be writing poetry in the first place, though Mr. Ward says I'm smarter than I know. Yeah, well, I wouldn't have bothered trying to write anything except that Open Mic Friday is one time I know I can get Tyrone Bidding's attention. And I've got a thing for Tyrone. Of course, he's got a thing for Tanisha Scott, like every other boy in school. Too bad we can't all have good hair and light skin. Who am I kidding? She's more than that. She's pretty, which I'm not, as my stepfather reminds me 10 times a day. Like, I don't know that from looking in the mirror or from having kids tease me about my blue black skin all the way through school. But my body's good. Nothing wrong with me in that department. That's why I gotta show it off. Wear clothes that accentuate the positive. The shorter, the better. And I don't even have to buy them, I can make them myself. It ain't much, but it's one thing I learned from my mother: how to sew. Last week, I wore my patchwork denim skirt and vest with red leather pockets that just about broke my sewing machine needle. Sheila was all up in my face telling me how cool I looked, like I needed her opinion. Why she's always trying to kiss up to black people is beyond me. Anyway, it was Lupe's compliment I listened to. She took one look at my outfit and told me she was jealous. Said she wished she could sew like me. Honey, I thought to myself, give me some of that pretty skin and hair of yours, and I'll trade. Lupe has no idea how pretty she is. You should see Raoul and some of the other guys, black and white, sniffing around her. And does she notice? Don't look like it to me. Except for Raoul. It's hard not to notice Mr. Latin lover boy. Anyway, Lupe says she already has a boyfriend. I'm thinking he's invisible, though. I never see him. He goes to another school, she says. Others say he doesn't go to school at all, that he dropped out a long time ago, that he's 8 years older than Lupe. 8 years! But hey, that's none of my business. At least she's got somebody. I'm still working on that one. Meanwhile, I spend my weekends alone, holed up in a room with my Singer sewing machine. I've been helping Mom mark and cut out patterns for as long as I can remember. I even helped her draw a few that Vogue never thought of. They should take a look at my sketch pad. Now, if I could just figure out how to design poetry as well as I design clothing, I could turn myself into somebody special. Wouldn't that be a neat trick? It wouldn't hurt if I could come up with something deep to write about, like Shankara. I wouldn't want to have the experience of someone beating up on me, though. It's bad enough my stepfather talks about me like a dog. The few times my mother gets on him about it, he laughs it off and says he's just joking. I should cut his tongue out, see how funny he thinks that is. Because there's sure nothing funny about being called ugly. So why does Mom let him do it? Sometimes I think she loves him more than me. Otherwise, she wouldn't let him tear me down like that. One of these days, he's going to call me ugly, and I'm going to ugly myself on out of there. I don't know where I'll go, but it'll be far away from him. Then Mom won't have to worry about defending me, and I won't have to waste energy being angry because she hardly ever does. She's all right in private, though. She tells me to ignore my stepfather, says I've got a lot to work with, that I can make myself over with hair and makeup when I'm older. For now, I can barely get out of the house with lipstick. Meanwhile, I sit at my sewing machine and dream about the great transformation I'm going to make someday, as if I could use pinking shears to cut out a new face for myself. Right? Dream on. So, Judy Ann doesn't like the way she looks. She knows that she has a good figure and a good body, but she doesn't like her hair. She doesn't like the shade of her skin tone. She thinks she's too dark. She doesn't think she's pretty, and she doesn't think boys pay attention to her. And so, as a way to get attention, try and make herself look prettier, she wants to have the best clothes. If you remember, one of the other characters called her Miss Saks Fifth Avenue, like Miss New York City fashionista. But she's making all of her own clothes. She can't afford to go to these big stores and buy fancy clothes, so she makes them herself and tries to show off her body in that sense. And a lot of her self confidence, it sounds like, or lack thereof, comes from at home. She has a stepdad who constantly tells her how ugly she is and that she's not attractive and he doesn't want to look at her and all that. And when she goes to her mom, hurt, and is like, Mom, tell him to stop, her mom's like, oh, he's just kidding. It's fine. He's just kidding. Probably because Mom doesn't want to stand up to him. Maybe Mom's afraid of being picked on. I don't know. But the way Judy Ann sees it is, well, maybe Mom doesn't like me. Maybe she's more worried about hurting his feelings than mine. And we know that Mom, it doesn't care about hurting her feelings much because of the way she talks about this talk they have in the room. That her mom tells her, You have a lot of potential. You'd be really pretty if you would just wear makeup. You'd be really pretty if you'd fix your hair, but you're not old enough for that yet. So when you're old enough to wear makeup, then you can finally be pretty. And she's saying she wishes she could design herself just like she designs her clothing, that she could make changes like that. So Judy Ann's poem is called Cocoon. Her cocoon is see-through. Inside, she is busy with pattern and pinking shears. If the ears are too long, she'll snip them. If the mouth is too wide, she'll stitch up the corners. Her needle and thread hold more magic than any wand. With her chalk, she can outline a fine and voluptuous shape. The nape of the neck is a perfect place to tuck and fold. Her straight pins hold the skin together just so. A quick basting stitch let her know where to set her seams. Her cuffs, her hem, after all, her arms and legs mustn't be too long. She mustn't stand too tall. Perfect beauty is what she's after. She's already had enough laughter in her life. The day she clips her way out of the cocoon, the only sound she plans to hear is a deafening cheer. Um, and that's a wonderful example of an oxymoron there at the end, to a deafening, well, a little bit deafening, meaning so loud that it turns you deaf. But she goes on as if she's like a butterfly in a cocoon, and a caterpillar goes through this huge transformation after being in a cocoon, and she's saying she's in her cocoon right now, and she's able to make all these changes, and she wants it to be perfect. So, don't none of these girls like the way they look? I don't get it. Guys don't have that problem. Not the guys I know. Would somebody clue me in? This is probably my favorite time that Tyrone speaks in this whole book, because guys, you might not see this, but the ladies in the room full on understand. There is something about girls at any age, but especially middle school and high school, that there's so little confidence. Even the girls that, um, by your standards, you might think are gorgeous, they look in the mirror and they don't see themselves that way. It's almost like every girl sees something wrong with herself. Um, and maybe it's they're not told that they're beautiful enough, or we see these impossible standards in the media and TV that girls can't live up to, and there's so much with Photoshop that girls beat up on themselves probably more than you will ever know. And many girls will think I'm the only one that does this. But I promise you, ladies, every girl in your classroom has something she doesn't like about herself. And it might be the very thing that you think's amazing about her. And so Tyrone is hearing all these girls give their speeches, and one girl after another gets up and reads her poem, and it's talking about how she wishes she was different and she wishes she looked better. And the guys, all their poems are really about um like I'm good at this and I want everyone to know it. But the girls' poems, notice, are all about how they wish they could change. And he's like, I don't get it. What is wrong with these girls? Like, they must think that all these girls are pretty. And he's like, what is wrong with them for them not to think highly of themselves at all? So we're going to read one more today, and that is Lupe Algerin. Judy Ann tapped me on the shoulder this morning and passed me a note real quick before Mr. Ward could see. It was from Leslie. Are you okay? It said. I turned and flashed her my okay smile. The smile was for real. I'm fine today. Pero last night? Forget it. I broke up with Marco and I was a mess. It was so silly. I've been planning to break up with him for weeks. I mean, I hardly ever seen him anyways. Plus, I've been thinking, if I'm going to have a baby, I need to find a better father than Marco. Somebody who's got time for me, at least. I don't want my baby and me to be alone like Gloria and Angel. She got it harder than I thought. Still, I wasn't in no hurry to break up with Marco because that would make it official. Lupe Algerin is alone. I can't hardly breathe thinking about it. I busted up with Marco over the phone, which is good because right after I hung up, I felt this big hole rip open inside of me. And I started crying like little Rosa does when she's hungry and her bottle's empty and her mom has just left the room. Once I calmed down, I called Leslie, but as soon as I heard her voice, the tears started coming again. "I'm sorry," I said, trying to hide my sniffles. "I shouldn't have called." "Lupe, what's wrong?" "I don't want to bother you." "You're not bothering me. Anyway, that's what friends are for. Now, what happened?" I told her about Marco and how I left him and how he didn't even seem to care that much and how I was all alone now. She was quiet for a minute. Then she said, "Lupe, sounds to me like you were already alone." "I know, but never mind. It's okay. You're not really alone anyhow. You have friends. You have me." "Yeah, I guess." Leslie said she feels lonely sometimes too. She told me about how it was right after her mom died. I really listened because she doesn't talk about her mother much. She said that after the funeral, and even months after she moved in with her grandmother, her world felt so empty and hollow she could hold it at one end and ring it like a bell. "It's better now," she said. We must have talked for an hour. I can't remember half of what we talked about, except that Leslie said that friends can be like familia, only she pronounced it familia. It took me a minute to figure out what she meant. Anyway, she was right. So I don't have a boyfriend now. So what? Neither does Janelle or Gloria or Leslie. But we have each other. Maybe we can all be alone together. Here's her poem called El Noche. Or Nacha? I don't know. I do not speak Spanish, but I think it's Noche. I stand out in the cold, El Noche and I, both too lonely for whispers. Only the wind shatters the silence. I've been here before, choking in solitude. But this time, when all the earth is hollow as a bell, I hold one end, ring it, and you come. A pale-skinned surprise. A friend. So she's talking about like how this loneliness feels like it's killing her, like it's always been that way. She's been there before, where she says she's choking in solitude, and solitude is your loneliness. And she says, but when she goes to ring a bell for help, here comes a friend that she didn't expect. So here's Tyrone's response. Her voice is so soft, I close my eyes every time she reads, trying to hold in the sound a little longer. I'm glad Mr. Ward asked her to read her piece over again. She says it like a whisper, but it's powerful stuff. It's one thing these ladies know how to do, be soft and strong at the same time, like my mom's. So he's impressed by these ladies as he realizes that they know how to be so quiet and peaceful, but they're also tough women. He's finding this respect. And it should be noted when he says like my moms, he doesn't mean multiple moms. That's like slang for mom in the Bronx area. And that is all we're going to read for today. That's the bottom of page 69.